Don't you dare put that plate in front of my grandchildren. Vivian Blackwood's sharp voice sliced through the quiet morning like a knife. Standing in the doorway of the sunlit marble kitchen was Camila, the new nanny, holding two plates of warm pancakes topped with strawberries. Her dark eyes flickered from the trembling twins at the dining table to Vivian's accusing glare. She knew this wasn't going to be easy, but she hadn't imagined her first morning would start like this. Thomas, Vivian snapped at her son, who sat exhausted at the head of the table, rubbing his temples. You can't seriously expect Lily and James to eat food touched by her. Camila tried not to flinch. She'd faced prejudice before. Growing up with a single mother in Atlanta, she'd worked since she was 14, studied harder than anyone else in her class, and graduated with honors as a pediatric trauma nurse. But nothing compared to the way Vivian Blackwood was looking at her now, as if she were dirt under her expensive shoes. Mom, please, Thomas began, his voice tired, but Vivian cut him off immediately. No, Thomas, these children are already fragile. Their mother is barely 8 months in her grave, and you bring this stranger into their lives? Someone like her, look at her. What does she know about caring for children of our status? Camila swallowed the bitterness rising in her throat and set the plates down gently on the table. She studied the twins, Lily and James, both just 5 years old. Their blonde heads drooped, their small frames thinner than any child's should ever be. In that moment, her resolve strengthened. She wasn't here to win Vivian's approval. She was here for them. Double quotes, Mrs. Blackwood, Camila said softly, her calm voice cutting through Vivian's hysteria. All due respect, but what if I can help your grandchildren? Because from what I see, they're wasting away under the proper care you value so much. The silence that followed was like a held breath. Vivian's lips parted, stunned that the nanny had dared to speak back. Thomas glanced up, surprise flashing in his tired blue eyes. Upstairs, the muffled sobs of the twins crying could still be heard, a haunting sound that had become part of the house since Isabella died. Camila knew those cries well. She'd heard them in hospital wards, in the quiet darkness of trauma recovery rooms, in orphan shelters where children clung to memories of mothers and fathers they would never see again. And she knew exactly how to bring them out of that darkness. Let me try, she said, her gaze fixed on Thomas. 3 days. If they don't eat a full meal in 3 days, I'll leave without a word, Vivian scoffed. Don't be ridiculous, Thomas. 3 days, Thomas said quietly, finally lifting his head to look at Camila directly. His eyes were tired, lined with grief, but somewhere in them, hope flickered. But my mother-in-law supervises everything. Camila nodded once, feeling the nervous churning in her stomach settle. Perfect. Maybe she learned a thing or two in the process. Vivian let out a small gasp of indignation, but Camila didn't even flinch. As she walked upstairs towards the children's rooms, her heart beat steadily. She had already done her research before coming here. She knew every detail of the twins' trauma, their mother's death, the house's dynamics, but what nobody knew was that Camilla's reasons for taking this job went far deeper than just helping to grieving children. Inside the small pink bedroom, Lily was curled under the vanity table, clutching a blanket that smelled of tears and fear. Camila knelt, ignoring the pain shooting up her knees from the marble floor. Hi, sweet girl, she whispered, her voice gentle. I'm Camila. You don't have to come out, but can I sit here with you for a bit? Lily peeked through tangled hair, her tear-swollen eyes blinking in confusion. For the first time in weeks, she stopped crying. Down the hall, James was sitting on the carpet in his room, building towers with blocks only to smash them down over and over again. Anger, frustration, fear. Camila recognized every movement. It was classic trauma processing. She watched him quietly from the doorway, feeling her chest tighten. These children weren't just refusing food. They were refusing to live without their mother. Vivian's voice cut through the silence again as she followed Camila upstairs, shaking her head dramatically. This is pointless. They need discipline, structure, not sitting on the floor like animals. Camila ignored her and turned to Lily again. The little girl's voice came out as a hoarse whisper. Grandma doesn't like you. Camila smiled softly. That's okay. She didn't like the last nanny either, did she? No, she didn't like her 'cause she was too young. And the one before 'cause she was too short, and you. 'Cause you're black. Camila felt a sharp sting in her chest, but didn't let it show on her face. And what do you think about that? She asked gently. Lily tilted her head, thinking hard with her small brow furrowed. Mommy said, people of different colors make the world like a rainbow. Camila blinked back tears she didn't know were forming. Isabella, the children's late mother, had said that. The woman whose life had ended far too soon, the woman whose death carried secrets no one else in this house wanted to uncover. Downstairs, Thomas sat alone at the kitchen table, staring blankly at his cold coffee. His mind replayed his mother-in-law's words and Camilla's calm defiance. There was something about her, something strong, unbreakable, and painfully familiar. He didn't know why, but a feeling grew deep in his chest that this woman was going to change everything for them. And Camila, as she stroked Lily's hair, thought quietly to herself. 3 days, that's all she needed, because what Thomas and Vivian didn't know yet was that she hadn't come to this house just to feed to starving children. She had come for the truth, and in this house of secrets, grief, and prejudice, Camila was about to unlock a door no one was ready to open, not yet. That evening, Camila sat in her small attic room, staring at the moonlit garden outside. The twins were asleep, their breathing finally even and peaceful after she read them stories about brave children and gentle mothers. Downstairs, she could still hear Vivian's angry voice echoing through the hall as she spoke on the phone to one of her friends, complaining about that woman taking over her family. Camila closed her eyes and thought back to her own childhood. Her mother had worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. Camila used to wait up at night, pretending to study while watching the door, just to see her mom walk in safely. She remembered the days when her classmates mocked her old shoes and the teachers who acted surprised at her high grades. Every moment of struggle had prepared her for this job, for this family, and for these children who needed her far more than Vivian would ever admit. The next morning, she woke up early to prepare breakfast. She made pancakes shaped like animals, cut fruits into stars and moons, and poured chocolate milk into little cups. When Lily and James came down, their eyes widened in wonder. For the first time in months, they smiled at their breakfast. Vivian stormed into the kitchen just then, her perfume clouding the air. She froze when she saw the children giggling as Camila placed a bunny-shaped pancake in front of Lily. This is ridiculous, she scoffed. They need proper meals, not childish nonsense. Camila kept her voice calm. Children who are grieving need comfort first. Nutrition follows. Vivian snorted and turned away, but Thomas, who had been silently watching from the hallway, stepped forward. She's right, Mom. At least they're eating. Vivian glared at him. You're letting this woman fill their heads with ideas. These people have strange ways. Who knows what else she teach them? Thomas looked at Camila, who met his gaze steadily, her eyes clear and strong. He felt something shift inside him, a realization that she was the only one seeing their children as real human beings instead of trophies to be displayed. Later that day, Camila took Lily and James out into the garden to play. She taught them how to make flower crowns and watched as they ran barefoot in the grass, their laughter carrying in the summer breeze. From the window, Thomas watched with a feeling he hadn't felt in months, hope, but beside him, Vivian's face twisted in disapproval. Don't get too comfortable with her, Thomas. She's here for a job, nothing more. Thomas didn't answer. His mind was elsewhere, thinking about how Camila spoke to the twins, how they clung to her as if they'd known her forever. Something about her was different. She wasn't just another nanny trying to please his mother or him. She had her own quiet strength that filled every space she entered. That night, after dinner, James came up to Camila as she was cleaning up the dining room. He tugged at her shirt softly. Miss Cammy, he whispered, do you think Mommy can see me from heaven? Camila knelt in front of him, her heart breaking a little at the fear in his small voice. "Yes, sweetheart," she said gently. "She sees you every day, and she's so proud of you." James hugged her tightly, and for the first time since she arrived, he didn't shake with silent tears. But while Camila was comforting James, Vivian stood at the kitchen door, her eyes narrowed and lips pressed into a thin line. That night, she called a private investigator. She wanted to know everything about Camila Williams, where she came from, what she wanted, and why she seemed so determined to stay. 2 days later, Vivian got the report back. Camila Williams, 28 years old, grew up in the South Side of Atlanta, single, no children, degree in pediatric trauma nursing. Employed at Atlanta Children's Hospital for 8 years before resigning suddenly 6 months ago. No criminal record, no debts, but there was one detail that made Vivian's blood run cold. Camila's sister, Grace Williams, had been a private nurse. 6 months ago, she had been working for Isabella Blackwood, Thomas's late wife, during the final weeks of her life. And then she disappeared. Vivian slammed the report down on the table, her hands trembling. She knew what this meant. She knew why Camila was here. That evening, as Camila was reading Lily a bedtime story, Thomas knocked softly and entered the room. His eyes were tired but gentle. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" She closed the book and followed him downstairs. In the quiet living room, Thomas rubbed his palms together nervously. I wanted to thank you," he began, his voice low, "for everything you're doing for Lily and James. They're happier, healthier. I don't know how to say it, but you're changing everything." Camila smiled softly, but inside, her heart was pounding. She didn't want to tell him yet, not until she was sure. Not until she had proof. "Thomas," she said quietly, "there are things about your wife's last days that you don't know, and I think you deserve to know the truth." Before he could respond, Vivian's sharp voice cut through the room. "Of course she would say that. She's here to dig up secrets. You think she cares about you or those children? She's here for revenge." Camila turned to Vivian, her eyes calm and unblinking. "I'm here for the truth and for them." She gestured upstairs where the twins were sleeping. "Whatever else you think about me doesn't matter." Vivian shook her head, her face twisted with fury. "You will regret ever stepping foot in this house." Camila said nothing. She simply picked up her purse and walked towards the stairs. But as she climbed each step, her mind was racing. She had come here to find out what happened to Grace, and now, with the Blackwood family secret starting to crack open around her, she knew one thing for certain: the truth was far uglier than she ever imagined. And she was going to make sure it came out, no matter what it cost her. Camila barely slept that night. Her mind kept replaying Vivian's words, each one dripping with bitterness and fear. She knew Vivian had found out, and she knew she didn't have much time left to bring the truth to light before Vivian found a way to silence her too. Early the next morning, she packed her things quietly and walked into Thomas's office. He was sitting at his desk, rubbing his forehead, his coffee untouched. "Thomas," she said softly, her voice trembling just a little, "I need to tell you something important." He looked up, his tired blue eyes searching hers for answers. "Is this about Grace Williams?" Camila nodded, surprised. "You know her name. I found some old medical bills," he said quietly. "She was Isabella's nurse in the final months, wasn't she?" "Yes," Camila said, her heart beating hard. "She's my sister." Thomas's eyes widened as he leaned back in his chair, shock written all over his face. Camila took a deep breath and told him everything: how Grace had been hired by Isabella to care for her secretly when she was too weak to hide her illness any longer. How Vivian had threatened Grace, forcing her to disappear just days before Isabella died. How their mother's death certificate listed a car accident instead of cancer. How the will had been changed right before she passed away. Thomas sat silently, his hands shaking slightly as tears filled his eyes. Why would my mother-in-law do that?" he whispered. "Because your wife didn't want the children to see her suffer," Camila said gently. She asked Grace to keep it private. But Vivian, she used it for her own control. She didn't want the world to know Isabella was sick. She didn't want people thinking illness could touch the Blackwood family. Thomas's face crumpled. As he buried it in his hands, Camila reached out and touched his arm lightly. I came here for answers, she said softly. But I stayed for Lily and James. They need you now more than ever. They need to know their mother didn't leave them. She fought to stay. She loved them until her very last breath. Suddenly, they heard Vivian's voice from the doorway. You think you can come into my house, destroy everything I built, and walk away like a hero? Camila turned calmly to face her. No, Mrs. Blackwood, she said softly. I'm not the hero Grace was, Isabella was. I'm just the messenger. Vivian's face twisted with rage. You'll regret this. I'll make sure no one ever hires you again. I'll ruin your life. Camila smiled sadly. You already tried that with my sister, but you can't ruin what you never built. Just then, Lily and James came running down the stairs, their small voices cutting through the tension. Miss Cammy, can we have pancakes again? Camila crouched down and hugged them both tightly. Of course, sweethearts, she whispered, always. Thomas stood up and faced his mother for the first time with real strength in his voice. Mom, I think it's time you left. Vivian blinked, shocked. What did you just say? I said it's time you left, Thomas repeated firmly. You've caused enough pain. We need peace, we need truth, and we need Camila. Vivian looked at him with disbelief, her eyes wide, then turned on her heel and walked out without another word. The silence left behind felt heavy at first, but then it lifted like a weight off their chests. Days passed, and slowly the house began to feel like a home again. Camila stayed not as a nanny, but as part of the family. She called Grace, telling her the truth had finally come out. Grace cried tears of relief, promising she would come home soon. One sunny afternoon, Thomas gathered Lily and James in the garden. Camila stood beside him, her heart fluttering as he took her hand. I don't know what the future holds, he said softly, looking at her with eyes full of love and gratitude, but I know I want you in it. Camila felt tears fill her eyes as she smiled and nodded. For the first time in years, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. As Lily and James wrapped their little arms around her waist, she closed her eyes and whispered a silent prayer for Grace, for Isabella, and for every woman who had ever been forced to hide in the shadows. Sometimes, justice doesn't come with grand gestures or loud victories. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a sunrise after a long, dark night. And in that moment, standing under the golden evening sky with the people who now called her family, Camila knew that love, truth, and courage would always find a way to win, because, in the end, it wasn't just about what Vivian tried to take from them. It was about what Camila helped them find again: hope, healing, and the unbreakable strength of love.